So now let's move on to another question. In what ways are international students excluded from accessing public services, and how do policies treat them differently from domestic students? So I know we talked a little bit about healthcare, but what about other public services? And I'll start with, see who I haven't started with. Ayat.
I definitely feel that there are a lot of, especially during COVID times, there are a lot of facilities that we are outed from, given the CERB and sometimes the CESB and all of that. But other than that, the university resources are open to everyone, especially at Ryerson University. Right now, I can't really think of what exactly international students and domestic students are kind of differentiated on, but it's, yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And just maybe to do a follow-up question on that, do you think that international students have equal access or fair access to the same scholarships, bursaries, and grant domestic students? Or if that's not the case, what can it be done to include international students in the existing funding opportunities that are now given to domestic students?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's the thing that I was kind of forgot to mention. But definitely, I think that a lot of university grants, bursaries, scholarships, we're left out of them. And I wonder why. Like, we kind of contribute towards that a little bit, I feel, from our tuition. So I usually ask myself, like, why does it say excluding international students? Or even in some cases, why does it say excluding mature students? It's so stupid to me in some ways, that we are not given the adequate resources and facilities that we need. And according to what the amount that we pay, we do require and are entitled to what we should get.
Yeah, the least universities and colleges could do is to provide more scholarships, more grants, and not breadcrumbs, not $200 here when tuition fees are skyrocketing year after year. What about you, Ankit? What do you think other public services are international students are being excluded, or is there funding opportunities at your university that international students are also not eligible for and that should be?
100%. There is so much, the gap is unreal. I think, and not just at my institution, at large, we know that post-secondary education and OHIP are obvious ones, like having access to, or even OSAP. Like, we don't have that. And honestly, loans can be accessed in many ways. OSAP is one of them. Other things like at Trent, we have the Trent Work Study Program. I'm assuming almost every university with domestic students has a work study program with their university, which is the government funding most of the money for certain low-income students who are eligible for OSAP taking them. And those are completely ineligible for international students. So I've tried applying for work on campus, and every position has a TWSP bracket around it. And I'm like, I can't have that, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that. Because even if you apply, your chances of being considered are so minute, I don't think it's worth trying. The summer job subsidy is often not applied to international students. This pandemic is an exception. Grad school grants, which just leads into the next question. Not access, if I can't apply for SHIRK, even if I try, it's because I'm an international student. And all of this is besides the fact that race-based denial of work and grants is a real thing. They will look at the skin, the color of my skin or my name on the resume and be like, maybe not this one. And even if I was a domestic student, there are chances they might not know that fact unless I provide, which why should I have to? And I understand your next question, just answering that directly. I think international students should get anything a person with a permanent residence should have access to. This is probably radical. But if we're going to pay the same taxes, if we're going to work similar jobs, if we're going to get the same education, give us the same access. If that doesn't make sense, then I don't know what does.
You said it. You couldn't have said it better. Absolutely, and you bring a really good point that it's not only xenophobic policies that international students see themselves in, but also racism is very real. So thank you so much for mentioning that, and like just paints the picture that international students to face different barriers day after day in different sectors to even study, which is exactly what they came for, and to like live here. It just gets really complicated. And I would love to also hear your perspective on this question, Wesam.
So yeah, that's a totally valid question, and the answer is we are excluded from so many things compared to domestic students. So I'm talking about the lack of access to public health insurance. I'm talking about scholarships are way less if you're an international student. I'm talking about the exclusion from the CESB just based on the fact that you're an international student. It wasn't considered whether you contributed to the economy or whether you contributed to the culture or anything. It was just, if you're an international student, you cannot apply for CESB, even if you were working and you were paying taxes to the Canadian economy. And I would say that the challenge that we are facing again is like the stereotype of international students are crazy rich. And that's why when we talk to anyone, they have this kind of perspective already in their mind that like, you should be able to afford it. If you're not able to afford it, then why did you come? But they don't really look at it as like, this is the life of a person that is actually being impacted. This is the lives of families that are actually being impacted. And you can see that this is actually reflected in the lack of regulations that protected the international students. So when I'm looking at the fact that international students face hikes in the tuition fees, and those hikes are not even regulated, and they can increase with any percentage from one year to another. And one example is Waterloo increasing the tuition, I think 2 years ago or 1 year ago, by 62% in 1 year, which means that even if you're an international student who's doing fairly well financially and you're just making ends meet, you are not given the privilege of just budgeting for a school. You're going into school not knowing how much I'm going to pay over the next few years. And this kind of lack of regulations and the lack of support is reflected into the fact that we are also a demographic that don't have votes. And that's why politicians tend to not listen to international students and their concerns. And that's why we see things that are not acceptable in Canada generally are happening to international students, whether it's the lack of access to health support, whether it's actually the lack of job opportunities, whether on campus or off campus, just based on the fact that you're an international student and you're not eligible to apply. And yeah, I think it's totally unfair, and there are a lot of gaps, and there are a lot of exclusions of international students, whether on the university level or the municipal level or even the provincial or the federal level.
I mean, you brought some really important points, and especially the one about international students being disenfranchised from all elections and how that really affects our ability to receive different services. And we can see this on the COVID-19 crisis. International students don't vote, therefore no supports are given, no benefits are given. And as a matter of fact, there's not even a regulation of tuition fees. And tuition fees, not only that they're not decreasing, they're increasing for international students during this very difficult time, especially when we talk, for example, at the University of Guelph, international students are facing tuition fee hikes, and across the country, as we see in universities, increasing, which is really shameful. It is really frustrating, and it further proves that these institutions and the governments don't really see international students as people, but really as cash cows and just money, which is to be injected whenever they want, without any support. So very well said. And I want to also highlight a comment sent from Afros, who says, universities in Ontario didn't reduce tuition fees, even though everything is online and the services aren't even 100%. Plus, we still have to pay for resources on campus that we're not even using, like library fees, which is another example of how there is, a quality education does not really correlate with how much we paid for tuition fees. And the only way to really bring justice is by acting together, by organizing, and by elevating each other's voice. Even if you're a domestic student, this is a really important situation, because we know that an attack on one student is really an attack on all students. So let's, oh, we have another question from Sarah. Say, hi, Sofia, Ayat, Wesam, and Ankit. I hope that you're all safe and doing well. Thank you. My question is, what is your advice in advocating for more accessible tuition fees for international students, given that universities increase fees by a significant amount? Wesam, do you want to start tackling this question?
Totally. I would love to weigh on this question. It's actually a big issue that we are facing as international students. I would say that the solution is in organizing on a provincial and a federal level. You will see that the fact that universities are depending on private funding and mainly depending on the tuition fees of international students as the main source of income or the main source of revenue is the root to most of the problems. And that's why we need to organize both on provincial and federal level through organizations like CFS and other organizations. We really need to be united at this point to ask for the main asks, which is accessible, publicly funded education for all. And we already have a lot of data that support how better it is to provide such an accessible education for everyone, and how it has proven through different political experiences and through COVID-19 that it is unsustainable to have the universities actually depending on international students as the main source of revenue. And we are seeing a lot of gaps to the point that a lot of the international students are actually rethinking about their decision to come to Canada or study in Canada. And this will lead to a collapse in the system if the universities are still depending on like 50% or like 80% of the revenue from international students.
Absolutely. And Ayat, what is your advice in advocating for more accessible tuition fees for international students?
I feel that Ryerson University in general, the student union, the graduate student union, and Ryerson Student Union, CESAR as well, has done a great job in advocating for many things on campus, and perhaps that this could be another campaign taken on by the student unions, because I know that when a student leader takes a voice, all the students join, because this is not only going to affect, like for example, increase in tuition. It's not only going to affect international students, it perhaps might affect domestic too. And that's when you kind of get a lot of support within the community. And that's, I think, a great thing that the university or the student union in general should take into course.
Absolutely. Well said. Ankit, what is your advice?
I've given this question great thought in extreme detail, so I'm gonna go on a bit of a quick rant. So the way universities administrations have limited power in dropping our fees as much as they are the primary decision makers in that. But the problem doesn't start with the administration, it's actually affecting them just as much as it is affecting us. So let's get this. Students' unions are legally not allowed to strike because they're not for profits, but campus labor organizations are. So the solution comes down to solidarity. If several campuses, let's say in Ontario, organize the labor and the students together, because students work on campus oftentimes, like I work on campus when I can. So when we all work and organize together, if there's a strike that labor organizations do for student issues, that means the university immediately stops working. Now imagine 20 universities in the province stop working. That's when the government recognizes that this is actually going to start costing them, because honestly, international students are not a ballot box issue, which is the largest struggle we will keep facing. So once we've gained solidarity and are organizing with our professors and campus workers, then the administration will come to recognize. Now imagine the administration advocating for what you want them to advocate. So occupy the board of governors and tell them that they need to motion the Council of Ontario Universities, which every university in Ontario is a part of, to lobby the provincial and federal government to drop the fees and make it publicly accessible. And when the universities and the students and the labor is all advocating for the same thing, there are high stakes for this to happen. It's going to take a lot of effort and a long time, but I think that's how we can continue advocating for international students' fees to drop and get free post-secondary education for everybody in the country. I know it's a lot of work, but it takes generations to make this happen. And I think we can do it. This is the time when agendas are being set for what Future Majority likes to call Canada 2.0. And this is how we get in.
Absolutely. It's about organizing. I just want to echo everything that the panelists have said. It is about organizing at different levels. If you are a student union, do it at your board of governors, at your administration, be relentless at it because it's a hard fight, but it's an important one. Last year, Dalhousie, international students at Dalhousie University occupied the president's office for, I think, 48 hours, which was impressive. I remember when I was an international student myself, we symbolically fired the president at Memorial University for failing international students, and it became news in the province. Media stunts like that, occupying spaces, being loud, it's definitely needed at this point. It's necessary to change the current structure and to provide the tools for international students to organize, because a lot of times international students come here not knowing that you can advocate for yourself or that you can organize at different levels. I myself didn't know until my student approached me. So raising awareness about that, providing platforms for international students to voice their concerns is incredibly important. And the same goes at a provincial and federal level. We need to keep at it, keep pressuring our MPs, our MPPs about fairness for international students in the different level with the different demands that we have. Make it a routine once a week to call your MP, call your MPP. I do it on issues, set my calendar reminders at that, and there's going to be a bigger campaign for education coming up from the CFS, so stay tuned for more details on that. But being part of these panels and keep organizing at different levels is definitely going to be incredibly important to find our strength in numbers and to create the solutions that we want to see. So, I mean, we're talking about international students, and something that is coming up more and more is the Navitas program. And I think it is really important right now that we start talking about it to see how effects and impacts does it have. So I guess my question is, what is the Navitas program and how does it impact students? And I'll start with Ayat on this one.
Sure thing. So Navitas is basically an organization that acts like an agent for first-year international students who do not speak or write English very well. Navitas also happens to write the courses that these students will take. The tuition that is set by Navitas is paid to Navitas itself, but a very small percentage is given to the university. Then if any student are successful in their Navitas classes and they are willing to join the university, they will apply as an international student paying full-time fees and will enter their second year at the university. A little background about Navitas is that in 2006, two notable universities in Canada took on the Navitas program. but ever since then have failed at every attempt to relaunch the program in any university in Canada. Also, to note, Navitas uses one of the low-cost contracting labor to deliver high-cost undergraduate programming. Navitas will use Ryerson University's resources like instructors, class space, resources, etc., while Navitas only does the recruiting. I believe that this whole program is designed to just exploit international students in another way by saying, hey, look, here's an interesting program, come on in. But instead it just takes your money and gives you low quality education. Representing CESAR, I would just like to say that CESAR is happy to represent the students, but we do not support the program itself.
Absolutely. And before I go to the other panelists, Ayat, you mentioned that this is coming to Ryerson, and was there a consultation process from the administration with the students' unions and with the faculty associations about implementing Navitas as a program?
So we know that there were only 2 or 3 consultations happening, and it was mainly disregarded by the panel, but still the program took on because, well, the university just wants to make more money, I suppose. But other than that, there was only 2 or 3 consultations, which is not enough to really get the whole background on Navitas. Yeah.
That's definitely a red flag there when there's like not a thorough consultation process and what that is being disregarded. Wesam, what is your perspective on Navitas, that this has also been a conversation out at Western University?
So I know that it's still an ongoing conversation at Western, and Ayat nailed it when she actually explained what Navitas is. I think that generally as a CFS, we have concerns when it comes to the fact that there might be some lack of transparency, or there might be recruitment tactics that the university is not overseeing, or the tuition fees, or how the program will be governed. The fact that there is lack of transparency when it comes to like what would be the staffing practices, what would be the quality of the education, what kind of resources will be available for the students in such a program. So I think there are a lot of concerns when it comes to adding Navitas to the like recruitment process for international students. And again, there is a general lack of transparency about Navitas, like how would it affect the international students? And it ties back to the fact that what Ayat is mentioning about like the lack of consultations in some of the universities. I know that like at least at Western, it was up for conversations multiple times at Senate. So I don't know how it's working at Ryerson, but definitely it's a huge concern when it comes to the lack of consultations or the lack of transparency.
Absolutely. And Ankit, what is your perspective?
Yeah, thank you for the fantastic summary, Ayat. I think that was very, very comprehensive. To simply put this, and apologies if I equip extremely technical language, but Navitas is a private organization, and like most private organizations, it has one goal. That's to maximize shareholder value. Student interests are secondary priority at best. It's in many ways a neoliberalization of our education. It's outsourcing of the education that you were going to get when you came to Canada. It's absolutely nuts. Lower quality of education, uncertainty around national regulatory ability. We don't know if these things exist. Ayat was already clear in mentioning that the quality of education is subpar. And from, I think, what we know, it has been at the places where it was employed. So, and beyond that, considering it's a private organization, the government's ability to regulate Navitas's quality and the price would naturally be limited. Going further, they will have control over the cost of fees and will just sign future predatory agreements with the university, which all comes at the cost of students and further exacerbates the issues that if students can foot the bill, they can continue to get this education. If they can't, too bad. Yeah. And as to summarize, it's a false university program that I don't believe has much to do with the quality of education in mind. And all of this is not to say that we don't know if Navitas will even approach private international schools for ESL students to come into high schools. It's totally possible, and we don't know if that's an opportunity they've considered, but it's possible. And we need to push back on this because now it's a matter of the quality of education that we and future international students receive. And I don't think it's going to fly.
Very important points, absolutely. And this is a program and an issue that the CFS has a radar on, and folks have been doing some research and have found that Navitas is definitely a danger to the quality of education because it further privatizes post-secondary education. It is a danger on student deception. International students don't necessarily know that they're going to a program that is not, let's say, Ryerson or this is at the University of Manitoba, that they're not going to the University of Manitoba, they're going to a whole different thing that is Navitas, and oftentimes pay with higher tuition fees that they're already facing. It is an issue of student representation. If you're not part of the university, then you're not part of the student union. And we know how important student unions are and how valuable they are, especially in terms of student advocacy. You're right, you're mentioning about labor conditions and how vulnerable it is in terms of having precarious labor. And we know that the issues that it comes with privatizing universities and the labor conditions that come as a result. So it is an issue for international students. It is an issue for quality of education. It is an issue for faculty and staff, which is really important. And what you're saying in terms of like creating coalitions at your universities and at your colleges with with workers, with students, with faculty associations to know more about these issues. And if you are a student leader joining us, find out more about this program. Keep an eye out if it's coming to your university. And we are definitely doing our research here and our investigation to provide more information as to what something like Navitas entails. We know that it has been rejected before. Carleton University, McMaster University, University of Windsor, Dalhousie University, and University of Calgary have been places where it has been rejected. So it is possible to fight it off, but it is a matter of organizing. Ankit, do you want to say something more? I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just realized I missed a couple of points. So I think it's important to know that right now is a very, very potent time for an organization like Navitas to make its way into Canada. For a few years now, the ESL enrollment in Canada at large has been declining, which means the profitability of this program, because the universities are partially privatized, is increasingly a concern. So if the universities can outsource the programming and teaching bit of their ESL programs, which are less profitable now, it means this is just better for their budgets. It's going to save them a couple of bucks when they lay off the existing ESL teaching faculty, and all they're doing is letting Navitas use their structures without recognizing that this is for the students, which are supposed to be at the center of all of this. The worst thing that could have happened to them. Not a good quality, worse for staff, as mentioned, precarious labor, and it's going to be more likely that all of our universities are approached by Navitas right now. So keep it on your radar and make sure you're ready to organize as soon as they come, because they will.
Absolutely, and let us know when they do so we can organize collectively again. So talked about a lot of issues that are facing international students right now. So my next question is, in what ways can domestic students faculty members, and community allies advocate for fairness for international students when it comes to ending the differential treatment of international students through both institutional and government policies? It's a really important question, and I'll have Ayat start giving her insight.
Okay, yeah. So I think the basic thing over here would be for everyone to raise their voice, make sure that you have allies, I think, in this position. But really consulting with your student union would be the number one thing. Getting to know if this is actually a good ground to stand on, especially in this moment during COVID. And I know that as a domestic student, probably they won't understand your struggle or your issues with a certain thing that you are passionate about. But in this case, really talking about it with them and making them understand, putting them in your shoes is the biggest thing that they can do right now.
Absolutely, like you're talking so much truth in the sense that it is about solidarity. Like we cannot get out of this only by international students organizing, but we need domestic students and everybody alike to put themselves in the shoes of international students and make these issues ballot issues and make these issues so salient that institutions and governments cannot look away. So thank you so much for sharing that. What about you, Ankit?
Yeah, I would like to draw a parallel. We saw in the last month the degree of solidarity that the BLM movement saw to bring strong collective voices to the front lines. In the same way, we're going to need an indiscriminate effort from across the board to bring light and real change for international student-related policies. Just because we're not a ballot box issue, just because we can't vote, and honestly, the politicians have no real incentive to hear us out, which means we have to scream louder than ever. That's straightforward to put it. The best part is that when international students win, everybody wins. Like I mentioned, when we start petitioning for international students in a different country to be able to access education from home, it means that students who are terrified of taking the bus and have immunocompromised issues can also access education through similar means. Collective victory is often achieved when international students win. So finding the lowest common denominator and bringing it to the center is very important. So as an international student, start talking to your collective folks, talk to domestic students, talk to professors, talk to labor, talk to your academic advisor on campus, and get them to call the MPPs, get them to ask questions, organize amongst all of them, and take initiative. I think the biggest thing and the most important thing that domestic folks can do is take that initiative and make space and allow our international students to organize and voice our own struggles. It often happens that we're not able to do that because we are scared. We get deported is a common concern, and I've felt that scare too. So yeah, just spread it out and make sure that there is space for international students to organize with everybody else doing it with them, similar to the BLM rallies and the BLM movement.
Absolutely, thank you for sharing that. And Wesam, in what ways do you think domestic and community allies can advocate for fairness for international students?
So I actually believe that it mostly ties into politics, right? And politicians will generally not make any decisions that protect international students unless there is a pressure from the voting demographic, which already excludes international students. So I think the key to being an ally is actually try to help with raising awareness about the concerns and the issues that international students are facing. I mean, like, for even some of the government officials and some of the MPs and MPPs, they are not actually aware that international students are paying taxes. and then they deny those facts. They actually don't know what kind of struggles we're living through, exploring the private health insurance. So I would say that the key to all of this is raise more public awareness. If Canadians get to know the struggles that we are facing, I know that Canadians will reject those kind of practices, and raising those kind of concerns into the politicians will force them into making decisions that actually help and protect the international students.
Well said, very well said. And then we have a question from Felipe. What advice would you folks give to international students who are feeling overwhelmed, homesick, or stressed during this pandemic? I'll start with you, Wesam.
So I would say it's totally normal to feel overwhelmed. Like, don't feel that you're alone going into this. I would say that all international students are actually facing struggles and very unique challenges when it came to COVID-19. And it is very challenging to explore and navigate the society while there is a general lack of support locally and provincially, and even on the federal level. And it's totally normal to feel that the system is unfair and it's full of injustice. And I would say that some of us are even facing problems to like the local level of we're used to a certain level of support, we're using to a certain type of resources that got shut down during the COVID-19. And don't feel sorry that that you're an international student. It is a reality that we are living through some of injustice. It is totally unfair, and there are a lot of folks who are actually willing to step up and try to stand up for you and talk on your struggles. The one advice I would have is like, get your experiences out. If you can share your own concerns and your own voices, even with a simple Facebook post, or just raising a question during a panel or a webinar to highlight the injustice that we are facing, you're helping addressing those problems. And reach out to the local resources. Try to reach out to the student unions. They will listen, they will help. Try to reach out to organizations that actually try to protect international students, whether this is CFS or Migrant Students United. Get your concerns out, voice your concerns, and have faith that hopefully things will get better.
And Ayat, what is your advice for folks that are feeling homesick or stressed during this pandemic?
Yeah, I agree with whatever Wesam said, but speaking personally, I think every international student goes through this. It wasn't just COVID that brought feelings of homesickness or stress, but definitely it's been accelerated these past couple of months. So same thing, you know, I just want to let you know that you're not alone in this, that every international student or every student in general is going through this right now. But don't forget that you have the resources on campus. You are healthy, you're doing good. Make sure that, you know, you keep in touch with your parents, with your friends, make sure you're going out. I think this time, especially, it's a great time to reconnect with yourself. You know, things that you told you would do and you never did them. It's the best time to do it right now. So just reconnect with yourself, and definitely that can bring a sense of loneliness, but you have to keep telling yourself that this thing is temporary and you're gonna come out of it and everything's gonna go back to normal, and that's what I wish for.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ayat. And Ankit, what is your advice?
What's mental health? I'm just kidding. it's, if you see this picture, this is most of our lives, every single day. We all sit there feeling like we're in a house that's set on fire. Homesickness is very real. International students, we suspend our primary support systems in often cases, which tends to be our families and our friends we've known for years back home. Then we come here, and we don't. It's harder to find access to those things. But I like to be an optimist and finding the silver lining in most things. And I think the silver lining here is that it seems that everybody has more time. Me personally, I've been able to reconnect with friends I haven't had a chance to connect with in years. I'm trying to make sure that getting back to people I haven't spoken to in 3-4 years. It's been nice catching up, realizing that regardless of where we are in the world, folks in Ireland, folks in Australia, folks in Southeast Asia, we're all going through a difficult time. There is comfort in solidarity. And on the other end of the spectrum, I like to keep myself busy. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. I've been reading a lot of books. I'm not saying you need to be productive, but I think in many cases, overthinking can lead us to enter thought traps that are hard to escape. So if you're feeling trapped in negative thinking, tap out and follow CFS Ontario and National everywhere you can, because I know they have regular live streams and they're quite fun. Your local students unions, you can definitely ask them for more programming. Students unions organizers are trying to find ways to support students. So if you believe that there's a way for you to be supported through your students union, hit them up. Or if you're feeling particularly enthusiastic, you even take charge and be like, hey, I want to do this through you guys, let me know how I can help. So I think there's opportunities, and when you get yourself to be busy, it might help. I know it's excessively optimistic. You might not want to do that, and if you just want to sit in your blanket and drink coffee, that's also totally okay. I also have those days. So do we. Everyone else.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that and all the wide perspectives you have brought in. And I want to echo what the panelists have said. And internationals, it seems like it is a really hard time right now, and it feels like you're all alone, but there is actually a big community out there of hundreds of thousands of international students who are going through similar realities, and definitely getting involved is a really good way to stay active with different organizations like the CFS, like Wesam said, also like the Migrant Students United, and it seems like we've talked a lot of difficulties and barriers and challenges that international students have faced, but collective action has been a topic on this panel actually works, and it has brought a lot of victories for international students. Way back in 2014, we were able to win working off campus just by having your study permit, not requiring a work permit, which was a further immigration barrier that international students had. The fight on keeping tuition fees at bay and trying to decrease them has been a really hard one, but the fact that tuition fees are not even higher than they are today are a result of international students and domestic students organizing at their local campus level with their students union, with CFS Ontario, with CFS National. So a lot of victories in things we take for granted today have been a lot of action and strength and powerful voices like folks on this panel, and like a lot of students out there coming together to say enough is enough. We will fight for our rights, and we need allies, we need domestic, we need workers on campus, we need faculty associations, we need everybody on this fight together to ensure that there's actually fairness for international students. So saying that, we need to wrap up, and I would like to again say thank you to Ankit, to Wesam, to Ayat for giving us the insight about the issues international students face. And you can add your voice to our call for fairness for international students by signing the petition in the chat box, calling on the federal government to expand the CESB to include international students. If you're an international student yourself and you would like to provide a digital testimony to raise awareness about the importance of providing protections for international students during the COVID-19 pandemic, Or if you would like to find out more about how to advocate for grad students, international students, and all students across Canada, take a look at the CFS webpage. The link will be in the chat box as well. cfs-fce.ca, also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Again, thank you to all the collaborators, the Continuing Education Students Association of Ryerson, known as CESAR, the Ryerson Faculty Association, the Ryerson Graduate Students Union, the Canadian Federation of Students, and the Jack Layton Chair of Ryerson University. CESAR invites you to join the next panel discussions in their Issues in Post-Secondary Education series. So you can join CESAR discussion about the state of public education and privatization in Ontario on Thursday, July 16th at 7 p.m. Really important discussion. Things like NAVIT will be further discussed among other issues of privatization. And their discussion about students facing precarious work on Thursday, August 6th at 7 p.m. Follow the CESAR Facebook page for more information about the upcoming panels, which will be broadcasted on Facebook Live. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Solidarity forever, and have a great night. And goodbye to everybody. Thank you.